The bigger one laughed first. That detail matters. Because in every story like this, there's always someone who laughs first. Someone who looks at a man and decides, without evidence, without caution, without a single second of real thought, that he is nothing. Marcus Webb was that man on a Tuesday morning in November. He was standing at the squat rack, chalk on his hands, headphones around his neck, watching a father help his 8-year-old daughter adjust her tiny gym bag near the entrance. The father was lean. Average height. Maybe 38, 40. He had the kind of face that doesn't register in a room, not ugly, not striking, just quiet. He wore a plain gray shirt, worn at the collar. Old New Balance shoes. The kind of man you've stood next to in a grocery line and forgotten before you reached your car. His name was Daniel Carr. He had a daughter named Sophie. He dropped her at school every morning at 7:45, picked her up at 3:10, never missed a day. He worked at a logistics company downtown, mid-level operations coordinator, the kind of job where you solve problems no one sees and get credit for none of them. His neighbors knew him as the guy who shoveled their driveways without being asked. His daughter's teacher knew him as the dad who always remembered her name. Nobody at that gym knew anything else about him. That was about to become Marcus Webb's most expensive assumption. Marcus had been training at Iron Gate Gym for 3 years. He and his brother Devin had come up through the local MMA circuit together, never professional, never quite good enough, but skilled enough to know it, and that knowledge had curdled into something ugly over time. They were big men. Both of them. Devin stood 6'2", 230. Marcus had 2 inches and 20 pounds on that. They moved through that gym like landlords. The regulars knew to stay out of their way. The staff knew to look busy when the brothers were in a mood. There was an unspoken social gravity around them, the kind that forms when 2 physically powerful men decide, collectively, that they don't have to be decent. Daniel had joined the gym 4 months earlier. He came 3 mornings a week, always early, always quiet. He never asked for a spotter. Never complained about equipment. He trained in a corner, methodically, with a focused stillness that some people found strange and most people simply didn't notice. Marcus had noticed. He didn't like it. There was something about the way Daniel moved, unhurried, deliberate, like a man who had never once needed to prove anything, that irritated Marcus in a way he couldn't name. And things Marcus couldn't name, Marcus tended to poke at until they broke. The first incident was small. Daniel was using the only open flat bench, working through a set of dumbbell presses, when Marcus walked over without a word and set his water bottle on the edge of the bench. "I'm gonna need this." Not a question. Not even close. Daniel looked at him. Finished his rep, set the dumbbells down carefully. Stood up. "I've got 2 sets left," he said. That was all. Calm. Even. Like he was reading a weather report. Marcus tilted his head. Smiled the kind of smile that isn't one. Cool story. Devin appeared from somewhere to the left, the way Devin always did, like Marcus carried a gravitational field that pulled his brother into conflict. Devin leaned against the rack, arms crossed, watching with the lazy amusement of a man who'd seen this play out before and already knew how it ended. Except he didn't. Daniel looked at both of them for exactly 3 seconds. Then he picked up his dumbbells and finished his set. Both sets. Slowly. Methodically. Without another word. Marcus's smile didn't move. But something shifted behind his eyes. It escalated the following Monday. Daniel arrived at 6:15, same as always. The gym was nearly empty, 2 guys on treadmills, a woman doing cable work in the back. He found his corner, laid out his mat, and began his warm-up routine. It was a specific sequence, deliberate, technical, nothing a casual observer would recognize as anything other than stretching. Marcus recognized it. Or thought he did. "What is that?" he called across the floor. Some kind of yoga class? Devon laughed. The two guys on the treadmills glanced over and looked away. Daniel didn't respond. Hey. Marcus walked closer. I'm talking to you. Daniel continued his movement. You deaf, man? I said, what are you doing? Daniel finished the sequence. Stood. Looked at Marcus with the same expression a surgeon might give a child who'd asked a complicated question. Warming up, he said. Marcus stepped closer. He was easily 6 inches taller, 60 pounds heavier. He positioned himself the way men like him always do, close enough to establish the implied threat, confident enough to enjoy the space it usually creates. Daniel didn't create that space. He just stood there. Still. Hands at his sides. And there was something in that stillness, something Marcus's body recognized even if his brain didn't, because for just a fraction of a second, Marcus Webb hesitated. Then he covered it with noise. You should find a different gym, he said. This place isn't really for people like you. People like me, Daniel repeated. Yeah. Marcus glanced at Devon. People who don't belong. Daniel held his gaze for a long moment. I'll keep that in mind, he said. He turned and went back to his workout. What Marcus didn't realize, what neither of them could have known, was what Daniel Carr had been before the gray shirts and the logistics job and the school pickups. Before Sophie. Before the quiet life he'd built in this ordinary city. Daniel had spent 11 years in the United States Navy. Not in a support role. Not behind a desk. He'd been selected for SEAL training at 22, completed BUD/S in the top third of his class, and spent the better part of a decade doing work that still exists in classified documents. 3 deployments to active combat zones. 2 commendations he never mentioned to anyone. A body that had been pushed past failure so many times that failure had simply stopped being a concept his nervous system recognized. He'd left the service at 33. Quietly. The way men like him always leave, without ceremony, without announcement, folding that chapter closed and walking into the next one. The logistics job was intentional. The routine was intentional. The anonymity was intentional. He had spent 11 years being exceptionally dangerous. He was not interested in being that anymore. But he remembered how. The third incident happened on a Thursday. Sophie had a half-day at school. Daniel had brought her to the gym, just to pick something up from his locker, 2 minutes, he'd told her, and she'd come in wearing her backpack, her hair in 2 braids, clutching a juice box. Marcus and Devon were near the entrance. Devon saw her first. Said something to Marcus, low, not loud enough to hear. Marcus laughed. Then, as Daniel came back from the locker room, Marcus spoke up. Bring your kid to do your workout for you? It landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. The woman at the cable station stopped moving. One of the treadmill men turned his head. Sophie looked up at her father. Daniel looked at her first. Not at Marcus. At his daughter. He looked at her for exactly the length of time it took him to decide something. Then he looked at Marcus. Go wait by the door, Sophie. His voice was the same voice. The weather report voice. But Sophie moved without a word. Children of quiet men often understand tone better than words. Daniel walked slowly toward Marcus. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just direct. He stopped at a distance that was not polite and not threatening but something in between that felt, somehow, worse than either. He didn't say anything. Marcus filled the silence. Men like Marcus always do. What are you gonna do, Dad? The word dad landed the way he intended it, like a diminishment. Like a reduction of a man to a single soft role. Daniel studied him. I'm going to ask you one time, he said, to not speak to my daughter. Or what? Silence. Or what? Marcus repeated, louder, stepping forward. Devon moved off the rack. The gym had gone completely still. And then something happened that no one in that building fully understood in the moment, but that several of them would describe later with identical language, each independently, to different people, in different conversations. They said, the room changed. They said, it was like a switch. They said, they didn't see him move. What the security footage showed, and it was reviewed by 3 separate people before the police arrived, was Marcus Webb reaching out to push Daniel Carr in the chest. It showed Daniel's right hand redirect the arm. A pivot. A single controlled movement that used Marcus's own momentum to bring him down to the mat with a sound like a bag of cement hitting concrete. It showed Devon rushing forward. It showed Devon stopping. Not because of anything Daniel said. Not because of any warning. Devon stopped because of something he saw in Daniel's face, or more precisely, something he didn't see. There was no anger there. No adrenaline. No performance. Just a man standing in a neutral stance, completely composed, watching Devon make a decision. Devon made the right one. He stepped back. Marcus was on the floor. He was not unconscious, but he was not moving. His elbow had been controlled at a precise angle, not broken, technically, but the message delivered to every nerve in his arm had been thorough and complete. He looked up at Daniel. Daniel looked down at him. "You should put some ice on that," Daniel said. Then he walked to the door, took Sophie's hand, and left. The real fallout happened Wednesday. Marcus had filed a police report on Friday, assault, he said, unprovoked, his word against several witnesses. The responding officer, a 12-year veteran named Torres, had listened to the account, taken the names of the witnesses present, and then asked Marcus one question. "Do you know who that man is?" Marcus had said no. Torres had nodded slowly in the way that means something specific. The witnesses told the same story. All of them. Independently. Including Devon, whose account, given quietly, with his eyes on the floor, did not support his brother's version in any way that mattered. The charges went nowhere. What happened next moved faster. The gym's owner, a former Marine named Sal, who had reviewed the footage himself before anyone asked him to, posted a notice on the front door the following Monday morning. Marcus and Devon Webb's memberships had been terminated. Effective immediately. No refund. Sal had made one phone call before he posted it. He'd called a friend who knew Daniel's service record. Not all of it, most of it was still sealed, but enough. Sal had looked at the notice in his hand for a long moment. Then he'd added a second line. Members who engage in harassment of other patrons or their families will be permanently banned. He'd left Daniel's name out of it entirely. Some men don't need to be named to be protected. There were other consequences. Smaller ones that accumulated. Marcus worked in construction management. 3 men on his current crew had been at Iron Gate that Thursday. Word travels the way it always does, sideways, quietly, through text threads and job site conversations. The crew's foreman, a man named Aldridge, had served 2 tours in the army before getting into construction. Aldridge didn't say anything directly. But the following week, Marcus found his workload restructured. His access to certain project files quietly reduced. Nothing documented. Nothing provable. Just the slow, steady physics of a man whose reputation had shifted beneath him. Devon fared worse. His girlfriend of 8 months, who had heard his version of the story, then heard a different version from her coworker who had been on the treadmill that Thursday, asked him to explain the part where he'd moved toward a man who was holding his daughter's hand. Devon didn't have a good answer for that. Daniel Carr dropped Sophie at school on Friday morning at 7:45. He stopped at the bakery 2 blocks from his office. Ordered a black coffee. Sat for 11 minutes. Read nothing. Looked out the window at the street. He thought about nothing in particular. This was a skill he had worked to develop over years. The ability to let a thing be finished and stay finished. To not carry it forward. To return, fully, to the life he'd chosen. At 8:03 he walked to work. At 3:10 he picked up Sophie. She asked him, on the walk home, if those men at the gym had been bad guys. He thought about it for a moment. They made a bad choice, he said. Did they get in trouble? Yes. She considered this with the serious deliberation of an 8-year-old processing moral information. Good, she said. And then, can we get pizza? Sure, he said. They walked the rest of the way home in the late afternoon light, his daughter's hand in his, the city moving around them, ordinary and unhurried. Nobody watching would have known anything. That was exactly how he preferred it. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever watched someone underestimate the wrong man and felt something settle in your chest when the truth came out, subscribe. There are more stories like this one. Men who don't announce themselves. Men who built something real in silence, and protect it the same way. They're waiting for you in the next video.